Hey everybody, so we're back with the Whoopie sling trick from my previous video where we take our continuous loop and we pass our splice loop of our Whoopie sling through it, close the continuous loop, and then we utilize the tail to create a soft shackle of sorts, and you can hang like this. So the question is, what about a long hang? How can this be released? That's a good question. So shout out to Derek Hansen for asking that. So this video will be some technical notes on how that can be achieved. Okay, so first, let's do some different colors just to make this easier to follow. So we got our little mock Whoopie sling right here. Right here is our spliced loop. And this little loop is going to play the role of our hammock loop. So splice loop of the Whoopie sling goes through the lark's head. And then we got our bite. The bite is being supplied by the tail of the Whoopie sling. Okay, so the first way that tension can be relieved so that this bite can be pulled out easier, because admittedly that loop right there, this one, that thing is going to cinch down very small. So what you do is you just grab this part, these two strands in this loop, and then you pull your continuous loop this way. Now, of course, my hammock is going to be connected, so my body weight is going to help. I just grab on this and grab right here, and then just kind of lean into it and give it a little pull. And all I need is like a 1/2 millimeter right there, and this little bite will pop right out. So that's no problem. But the lark's head can be an issue. So what I've experienced pulling this hard over long periods of time, that bite right there, that little fold, it will not want to pass through the lark's head, which is actually good. That means this thing is pretty reliable. So here are some ways that you can get the lark's head to release. So let's take our mock Whoopie sling and go back to where we were. And so what we do is take this tail right here and just drop it through the splice loop of your Whoopie sling. So now it's going to be like this with this tail. So when you go to release this, the first thing you're going to do is grab this part. And since your hammock's going to be over here, so it's going to be easy to just lean some body weight, that part's going to come loose pretty easy. And now you can pull your bite out. But now the tail of your Whoopie sling is going to be hanging out in here. So check this out. You grab the tail and you pull this way. You can use your finger to help, and that will give you leverage. It will pull these two strands apart, and that lark's head that gets super tight, it will open it up just enough to pop it right off there. Like that. So you can use the tail of your Whoopie sling inside of that splice loop as a little mechanical advantage. That's one of the ways that I figured out how to do all this. And sometimes you might not have enough room on the tail. If your Whoopie sling is adjusted out to absolute maximum length, you might not have enough. So you need another way to have leverage against this little lark's head. So after you release this, here's another thing you can do. You can just grab these two strands, pull this way, and notice it's trying to actually flip that lark's head into the orange. But what it does is it creates slack. Now flip it back. All you're doing is grabbing these two strands and pulling this way, and that will create enough slack in the lark's head after a long hang to allow it to slide off. So that's another mechanical advantage that you have against that little lark's head. So what other mechanical advantages do you have? So remember, this is going to be sitting like this. It's going to be like waist high or chest high possibly. And if this thing is super tight, all you got to do is grab right here. Just grab your line, your Whoopie sling, and lean backwards a little bit. Just put one foot behind you, lean backwards a little bit. It'll pull it off. Or put a 1 foot in front of you, lean forwards, and just use your body weight. Your body weight is enough to pop that out of there. your hammock will be over here, so you can have plenty of stability. Just lean forward and let it pull itself out. Just use your body weight. So that's another way that you have leverage against this setup. So those are a few ways that you have leverage to get this whole thing undone. You have the possibility of a strand being in here. Like I showed you before, you can take that tail of the whoopie sling and pull this way. But you can also take that tail and grab it like this. You can just grab it, and then you can pull right here. You can pull on that spliced loop of your whoopie sling, and you see what it's doing? It's got a mechanical advantage against that loop. So if this loop is just super crazy tight, look at all that mechanical advantage you have. It's like a lever. Yeah. So those are a few ways that you can overcome all of that crazy tightness that inevitably will probably happen when you do all of this stuff. And of course, if you have a continuous loop like one of my Evo loops or universal loops with a knot, well, of course, then this whole setup is just obsolete, because then you just got a built-in soft shackle. But the whole idea of this is you don't need anything. The whole idea of this is you just need nothing except for your continuous loop in your whoopie sling. And even if you have a continuous loop, like my universal loop with a knot right here, and say you flip a lark's head into it above the knot, and then you go in with your whoopie sling, that knot is going to prevent the lark's head from closing up that much. So, I mean, this isn't meant to be like the super easiest be all end all. It's just meant to be super simple. And now one last way you can prevent that lark's head from closing up crazy tight. So watch this. Let's do our first lark's head, right? So that's the lark's head that normally we would pass the whoopie sling through and then put the bite. Well, let's take that lark's head and now flip another lark's head into it. So grab a bite and pull it up into that lark's head loop that you just made, and kind of pull it all out like this. So look at that. Look at that lark's head. Okay, so now we're going to use that lark's head like we did before. I call this right here a stacked lark's head, because it's like a lark's head on top of a lark's head. So now we have our whoopie sling spliced loop going through, right? We're going to put a bite in it. So for maximum thickness, we're going to do a bite. Okay. We're going to make sure that lark's head closes up a little bit, because, okay, so now we can hang like before. We got our hammock over there, or tree over there. Now it's going to work just like before, but when we get the first part free, we get that bite free. Notice this lark's head is going to refuse to close up because of that little extra strand in there. That extra strand makes the lark's head incapable of closing as tight. So this little stacked lark's head means that when you go to pull this off, it's going to be a lot easier because it's not going to jam. And you also have more power against this lark's head if you use my other methods, such as pulling this way. Like if you have a little bit of tail in here, like before, and you go to pull stuff apart, your mechanical advantage is going to be even more. Because this lark's head that I just showed you is very resistant to closing up all the way, because it has to close that first lark's head right there that you made, and it also has to close that other one. And within that lark's head are those extra strands. So that's the stacked lark's head. That's what I call it. I'm not sure if there's a technical name for it, but as you can see, I just made one lark's head and pulled the other one through. And so all this portion right here that you see, that's filling that gap of the lark's head, preventing it from jamming up like crazy. Yeah, so there you go. That's just some technical notes on how to release it. You have tons of body weight and tons of mechanical advantage available to you. Once you notice it all, it's super easy. See you guys later.